American Psycho is a message. This movie isn't about violence. It might not be evident, but look closely. The story is about you. Yes, you are Patrick Bateman. Snuff This Book was the title of the early review of American Psycho in the New York Times. When Bret Easton Ellis' American Psycho was due to be released in 1991, news of its portrayal of a monster, a young, immoral Wall Street serial killer who nail-gunned women to the floor, doing far worse to them, was met with anger. There were death threats against him. Everyone equally hated Patrick Bateman and Bret Easton Ellis for giving birth to the most unsavory creation in literary history. It was a masterclass by Bret Easton Ellis on how to novel on the torture of women. Fast forward to the present, 32 years after the book and 22 years after Mary Harron's superb film adaptation of American Psycho to 2023. How things have changed. Bateman has become a pop something in the last decade or two. A smirking, blood-flecked national idol. You can purchase Bateman action figures. Photographs and memes of the movie are all over the internet. There has never been a movie so rooted in meme culture and men love him. But why? Why do men relate to a textbook psychopath? In 2020, when speaking to Movie Maker magazine, Bret Easton Ellis stated that he, as an observer, intended to critique the yuppie culture of 1980s, rooted in the greedy pursuit of wealth. He was particularly troubled by the attitude of cocky young stockbrokers. However, in the 2010 interview with the Oregonian, Ellis revealed a different perspective. He said that Patrick Bateman came from his isolation and disconnection, that he was trying to compensate by slipping into a consumeristic void that was supposed to boost his self-confidence but only intensified his feeling of inadequacy. Despite the apparent contradictions in these two accounts, a common thread emerges: consumerism. Jean Baudrillard was a French philosopher and a cultural theorist, considered the high priest of postmodernism, and is known for his influential work on postmodernism, consumer culture, and hyperreality. His notion on hyperreality, detailed in his book titles Simulacra and Simulation, which rightfully got featured in a scene in Matrix, asserts that in a postmodern world, the simulation of reality has become more real than reality itself. Baudrillard argued that society has become so saturated with images and signs that we can no longer tell what is real and what is an illusion. Objects gain value not from tangible qualities but from signs, brands, logos, and other socio-cultural codes. Let's talk Air Jordans. The year was 1984. NBA was in trouble. The viewership was dropping. They have not produced a new star in a long time. Nike, the then not so relevant sneaker brand, spotted an opportunity. If they could align their brand with the next breakout superstar, they could create a line and benefit from the player's rising popularity. They set their sight on Michael Jordan, who had just finished a legendary college career at UNC. His gravity-defying dunks and competitive fire were the perfect embodiment of a star NBA so desperately needed. Nike signed Jordan to a 5-year endorsement deal before he even played a single NBA game. Michael Jordan was the first ever sneaker in the Jordan lineup during a preseason game for the Chicago Bulls. But there's a big problem. The black ankle trainers with a rich crimson trim violate the NBA's uniformity of uniform rule, which states that shoes worn on the court must be 51% black or 51% white. The NBA stated in a letter to Nike that the league rules and procedures prohibited the wearing of a certain red and black Nike shoes by none other than Michael Jordan himself. From that point on, every time Jordan stepped on a court in his signature shoes, he was hit with a $5,000 fine, a fine that Nike was happy to pay. This catalyzed an unparalleled advertisement campaign designed to introduce the Air Jordans to the globe. Nike focused on advertising the sign value of the product and not the product in itself.
On September 15th, Nike created a revolutionary new basketball shoe. On October 18th, the NBA threw them out of the game. Fortunately, the NBA can't stop you from wearing them. Air Jordans.
The sign value of these sneakers soared far above their actual production cost. People weren't just buying shoes, they were investing in a piece of a myth, an aspiration, and a lifestyle. Owning Air Jordans wasn't just about the footwear, it was about being a part of a cultural phenomenon. The sneaker became a symbol of status, authenticity, and belonging. Bateman methodically crafts his sign value in his universe, fussing over the smallest details of his looks and surroundings. Everyone in Bateman's world are valued by the objects they own and the apartments they live in. The man had a literal panic attack comparing business cards.
Subtle off-white coloring. The tasteful thickness of it. Oh my god. It even has a watermark.
Showing how minute differences in fonts and card texture is the concern of the world he lives in. And they are so consumed by themselves that they enter into this meaningless, shallow dick measurement contest of sorts. If you notice, even the phone numbers on these cards are the same, but not for Bateman and his buddies. He lives in a society where outward appearance of riches and success are more important than actual feelings or connections. Even when he walks around announcing that he is a murderer, no one pays attention to who he truly is.
Fucking ugly bitch. I want to stab you to death, then play around with your blood.
Because no one is distinctive in his world. Everyone looks similar, walks and behaves similarly, and can't identify one another, always calling each other by the wrong names.
Hello, Halberstram.
Alan has mistaken me for this dickhead, Marcus Halberstram.
They are so shallow and preoccupied with creating this sign value for themselves that they fail to notice Paul Allen's disappearance. Even worse, Paul Allen's own family might have been involved in the cleanup of his apartment, where Bateman stashed all the corpses. Is your world any different? In the world you navigate, reality and simulation have intertwined so seamlessly that it's often hard to distinguish where one ends and the other begins. You see images, representations, and simulations screaming for your attention every second. These are not just simulations, they are carefully crafted hyperrealities, enticing you to aspire to ideals that may not even exist. Your social media profiles are curated galleries of your best moments, your most idealized selves, yet they are only shadows of your true lives. The influencers you follow project the most exaggerated version of this hyperreal space onto you to make you a constant part of this consumeristic state, forcing you to express and define yourself through objects. People who wear specific clothing or consume certain objects mark you if you don't. Corporations utilize your constant interaction with these simulations to sell you signs that are assigned value greater than the product value itself. Take the Supreme brick for example. An ordinary brick stamped with the Supreme logo sells for $30. The influencer market grew from $1.7 billion in 2016 to over $21 billion in 2023. Modern society has become so overwhelmed with simulation and virtual representations that we can no longer tell the difference between reality and symbols. This has crept into all aspects of our lives, including dating. Your carefully curated photos and bio on dating apps offer a simulation of yourself, a hyper-reality of your best traits. We judge potential partners largely on these hyper-real profiles rather than actual human connections. In a study based on objectification theory, researchers discovered that Tinder users reported less satisfaction with their faces and bodies, more shame about their bodies, a greater likelihood of monitoring their appearance and viewing themselves from an external perspective, stronger internalization of social appearance ideals, and more frequent comparison about appearance. Men on Tinder had lower level of self-esteem than men and women who avoided Tinder. Men especially feel pressure to present their most attractive, high-status version. A man is chosen for his sign value, what his photo symbolizes about his wealth, fitness, and lifestyle within a simulated reality designed to attract a mate, reducing people to just pixels. Patrick Bateman is the quintessence of this. He's an embodiment of society. Even in his own words, he is defined by the expensive apartment he owns, the Valentino suits he wears, and the dinner reservations that he can pull. He talks the language of ads that engulfs his world, driving forward by consumption. He is just his appearance. As he says,
I simply am not there.
in this hyperreal landscape, Bateman's murders become a form of performance art, the only way to assert his existence in a world where everything is a simulation, a way for Bateman to feel primal. He is beyond good and evil. To understand Bateman is to understand the true you, and to do that, we need to understand the persona. Growing up, you quickly learn that certain behaviors are accepted and appreciated. Get good grades, you are rewarded with praises and gifts. Talk back to the teacher, that's scoldings and timeout. Openly expressing anger or sadness was seen as inappropriate for a young girl. As children, you naturally seek acceptance and approval from parents, friends, and teachers. To gain this acceptance, you begin to adopt behaviors that are perceived as good by society. Conforming to societal norms often come with tangible benefits, including social connections, a sense of belonging, and monetary aid at times. You internalize these learnings, carefully crafting the persona, a face for the world around you to see, hiding whatever you deem unworthy to show into the deep corners of your subconscious. Psychologist Carl Jung referred to this persona as the conformity archetype.
I haven't read anyone I regard as deeper than Jung. He's terrifying, truly terrifying.
This social structure is so rooted that we are too scared to even question why and just follow the order, sculpting away a self that we want the world to see, or rather, one that the world would love to see. Bateman is just that, a persona, an ideal that the society deems worthy to interact with. He sees himself above all the people who are deemed unworthy of this stature. Alongside the persona, there are parts of your personality that you consider undesirable. These traits, often deemed bad by society, are what Jung calls the shadow self. You fear rejection, judgment, or exclusion if you were to openly display the darker aspects of your personality, so you opt to keep them hidden. Repressing your shadow self can lead to inner conflict and tension. You will feel disconnected from your true selves, fighting these monsters inside you. Like Nietzsche says, when you fight with the monsters, you should see to it that in the process you don't become a monster. Society reinforces the idea that being good is virtuous and anything else is undesirable. This conditioning starts early and continues throughout your lives. In your quest for acceptance and success, you learn to wear a mask, the persona, to fit into the society's mold. Yet beneath that mask lies the unexplored territory of your shadow self. You fail to embrace the idea of being whole and not just good. True greatness is only when you learn about your shadows and have control over it.
The pathway to completion as a human being is through the embodiment of the monster.
Bateman is seen wearing an actual face mask every day, representing him donning a persona for the world outside. When he is wearing it, he goes about describing his morning routine of how he crafts his ideal version every day. When he takes it off, is the only time we see him shedding light on his shadowed self, confessing his true nature. For Bateman, the exaggerated American chainsaw-style murders are more of an aesthetic embracement of this shadow self of his. Bateman's shadow wants to establish his dominance over everyone he deems unworthy. In one scene, we see him talking about saving the poor.
We have to provide food and shelter for the homeless.
The scene right after, we see him killing the homeless man, making a clear distinction of his persona and shadow self at play. We could debate if the murders happened or not, or if it was all in his head, but that is not what is important. American Psycho isn't a movie about the psycho. It's more about the deprived, self-obsessed, consumption-driven, shallow Americans in Bateman's universe. The story arc of Bateman might as well apply to any of them. The reason so many of you relate to Bateman is that he is what you are. You spend your 9 to 5 slogging away in confined buildings filled with people who are no different than you, there to make more money, move up an over-exaggerated success ladder that promises happiness, wealth, and power. But in reality, it just fuels loneliness, inauthenticity, and repressed emotions. You live your plastic lives day in and day out. The world you live in is an amplified version of the 1980s New York. What do you do when the sun goes down? You let your shadow self loose in your own capacity, not realizing, just like Bateman, what harm it is doing to you. Bateman is a product of his environment, and so are you. I was a part of this lifestyle too, but I quit. There are no more barriers to cross. All I had in common with the relentless pursuit of wealth, the chaos of the corporate world, and superficial friendships I have now surpassed. I turned my back on the people who stood by me, driven by the desire for a simpler, more meaningful life. My pain is constant and sharp. I do not hope for a better world for anyone, for I have chosen a different path. In fact, I want my pain to be inflicted on others. I want no one to escape. I have done so many wrongs and don't want to hide behind the moral curtain of a creator working on understanding Bateman through a philosophical lens. Truly, just want to draw new knowledge of who I am. But even after admitting this, there is no catharsis. My punishment continues to elude me, and I gain no deeper knowledge of myself. No new knowledge can be extracted from my telling. This confession has meant nothing.